Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're joining us. Welcome. This is the North Suffolk Community Services Wellness Series, and my name is Kelly Knox. I am the Assistant Vice President of Advancement and Grants Management, and I will be the host of this show. March is Developmental Disability Awareness Month, so today I invited Joyce Troisi, Director of Residential Services at North Suffolk, to join us and talk with us about the myths and the truths about people who live with developmental disabilities and the community services that are available to help. So welcome, Joyce.
Thank you.
So, greatly appreciate you being here with me. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself and how you ended up at North Suffolk and how you ended up doing this type of work?
Sure. So actually this year in October will be 30 years that I have worked in North Suffolk Mental Health, North Suffolk Community Services now, I must say, since we changed our name. I started off in residential back in 1993. 1993, I was a residential counselor at one of our group homes for mental health, right in Chelsea, and sort of just worked my way up. So I then became an assistant program manager of a mental health residential group home. I became a program manager. I opened up a respite program for North Suffolk, and then I was the assistant director at an outreach program for North Suffolk and MH. Then I became the program manager of a day rehab program for MH. So I sort of have been sort of all over the place a little bit for North Suffolk, helping out open programs. I then became invested as being the director of residential services for MH, and I think that they felt that I was...
By MH you mean mental health?
Yes,
right.
sorry, and I sometimes I'm talking too fast.
Yeah.
Mental health and more of the schizophrenia, schizoaffective, depression, anxiety, Axis 1 diagnosis from the Department of Mental Health. I then became the director of residential services for mental health and then added on the director of developmental services for DS, which I have been there for about 11 years now.
Okay, so you've been doing work with developmental disabilities for about 11 years.
Correct.
30 years.
Started off as MH, mental health. My mother worked here for 10 years prior to me at a day program for DS as an LPN, which was at the main office. So I would go by and visit her and then get to know the clients. And I always enjoyed helping people. I think sort of our family was always into the helping kind of field. I sort of got that from my mother and felt like, you know, if I could help people with disabilities and make their life better, then that's what I need to do.
Then you've chosen the perfect job.
I have.
So tell me about what diagnoses fit into the developmental disability umbrella, like what's under there?
So there's a lot of different diagnoses. I mean, we're definitely seeing a lot more autism and a lot more kids who are getting autism as they're going through their childhood stages. North Suffolk we don't have any child programs. All of our programs are adults. We have roughly 20 DS residential group homes. Some of those diagnoses would be like the autism spectrum disorder. So there's a whole bunch of different kinds of spectrums of that disorder, and just because it's labeled as an autism, there is so many different needs for each person, and each person's needs could be completely different depending on the spectrum. There's the cerebral palsy, which affects a person's ability to move and maintain balance and posture. So we have some of that with walkers and wheelchairs, who some clients need full hands-on assistance. We also have some clients who are in a medical program where we have group homes that a nurse is on site 40 hours a week, and then we also share nurses between the 20 group homes. Those are more, we have more medical for the cerebral palsy and more in wheelchairs, deaf, blind clients that we assist in Winthrop. There's the intellectual disability, so basically an IQ under 70 is a form of DS that you could get diagnosed with DS and get DS funding from the Department of Developmentally Disabled. Then you have the mood disorders. Some can have the mental illness aspect of it as well, so they could have a DS, an IQ below 70, but still have sort of that schizophrenic, schizoaffective, the mood disorders, anxiety. You also have SPD, which is a sensory processing disorder, where they benefit from sensory rooms and feeling and touching if they're deaf or blind. You also have the dementia. So you have the dementia disorder, and you really don't have to be DS to get a dementia disorder. That could happen with anybody, as the Alzheimer's dementia sort of kicks in as some of our clients are getting older. Mm-hmm. So there's an array of disorders for DS.
Yeah. So
speech disorder as well.
You said we had about 20 homes
Yes.
for developmental disability folks with that. How many people live in those homes?
So we serve 122 DS clients in those homes. You have a home right now. Some of our homes were grandfathered in. Right now, if you were opening up a new group home, it cannot be more than 5 clients. We do have a program in Winthrop that does have 10 clients, but they're more independent. So some houses you could have that are more independent, where they can go out on their own, they have community alone time, they could be in the house alone, so we have less staffing. And then you could have a residential group home where you have 3 staff to 4 clients that need full hands-on care. Complete full hands-on care. And then those are the houses that are more of our medical houses. We also then have turning 22 houses where a client ages out of childhood services. So at 21, they age out of childhood services, they get referred to us, and they call them turning 22 homes, where you might have more of the behavioral aspects, where some of those individuals might need to be restrained at times or just watched a lot closer, and they have additional staff on. Mm-hmm. So it just depends on the location in the house. We're mainly in Revere, Chelsea, and Winthrop. We do have some programs in Boston, Hyde Park, West Roxbury, Roslindale, Waltham.
So would it be appropriate to say that North Suffolk cares for people with developmental disabilities that are more severe than ones that family could care for? Yeah,
so especially, as I'm growing, as I'm getting older, I think what we're seeing now is more families are more involved in the care of their client, and a lot more people a lot of the clients diagnosed are staying home if they can. I think parents and family is trying to just have it so that they don't have to live in a group home, and that they're staying at home. And there's a lot more services now for DS, like a lot more community services. There's a lot of day programs. There's respite programs. So if a family is keeping their child home who is diagnosed with the DS diagnosis, if they want to go away and they feel it's not a good place for their child to go, they could actually get respite services for the child that they could put them in for the weekend, or that they could put in for the day while they go to work. So there's a lot more support now in trying to let people stay home. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a wonderful thing. And a lot more sort of apartment searching. Not only actually do we have 20 residential group homes, we actually have a whole in-home supports for DS, where clients live in their own apartments, and we go by and make sure that they're banking, they're food shopping, their house is clean, they're doing their laundry, and we assist them in any way needed. And a certain client might have so many hours, 5 or 6 hours per week, and we assess, is that enough hours for us? But we're going into their house, and we're trying, the goal is to keep somebody out of a nursing home or to keep somebody out of a group home as much as possible, because we definitely want to go for the independence and have them be as independent as they possibly can.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing. It's a great turning point, great way to turn.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. It's
so you see that a lot more, that people are staying with families, or that families are more accepting. So they also do like a family that you could move in with this family, even though they're not that person's family, and they're taking care of a client. And then, of course, after a couple of years, that client becomes their family.
Right.
And so it's sort of wonderful how it is sort of, shifting. That, it's sort of, I know we're talking about DS, but it's sort of the same with MH, excuse me. The more independent somebody can be, the better off.
Yeah, and empowering people to grab hold of that independence.
Absolutely, and recover from their illness however they can.
Right. So let's get to some of the myths and misconceptions about people living with developmental disabilities. I've listed some of them, like that they can't learn, and that they can never be independent, which we know is untrue based on our conversation thus far, that they're all alike, that their disability defines them. I think that's an interesting one, that they can't play sports, they can't play musical instruments, which we know is untrue. One of my favorite stories is, I read this in the New York Times, about Miguel Thomason. He's a man with Down syndrome, because that's one of the DS diagnoses,
Yes.
right? He's a man with Down syndrome who, he has put out more than 100 albums as a drummer.
Imagine.
Yeah, right? And he's really, really good. I mean, I listen to him. So tell me a little bit about how we break down these myths. How can we just get rid of them?
I wish it was that easy. I think once a myth starts, it just sort of transforms into something bigger than what it is. But I mean, we definitely in the group home try to take the person individually. And we have ISPs with DS, and we work very closely with DS. They all have service coordinators that we work with. And we try to see what the skills are. There's many skills of individuals. They might be lacking in one area, but then they have skills in another area, as maybe music, but yet maybe they can't do their banking, and I can't do my banking either half the time. So we definitely take the person as a whole, and we sort of look at how we can make the person sort of recover from some of their illness, if we can, and how they can live the most independent life, and how they could be the happiest that they could be. And is that maybe go into a day program that they want? Is that checking on what skills that they want to get a job, so we try to support them in a workplace that they can get a job. So the perfect story, I have a story of a client that we serve who is pretty high functioning, has some behavioral issues, but high functioning, and sort of didn't want to go to day program. And we could sort of understand that. Do I want to go to day program every day? What do they do in a day program? I don't exactly know. So what we did is we sort of changed it up with her. Instead of just telling her, yeah, just go to day program, we put in place like a Work Inc. program for her. And now like she has a job, and she's going out every day, and she's happy, and she's working, and she's making money. And you sort of saw the behaviors sort of dwindle, because now she's doing something in her life that she enjoys and that she loves doing, and she's getting paid for it. Mm-hmm. And we are supporting her on giving her rides there, and checking in with the employer, and making sure that everything is okay, and seeing how we can assist to make sure that she can keep her job. Yeah. So, can people be out in the community with DS? Absolutely. Are they independent in the community? Absolutely. Baby steps. Let's see how they do after an hour. They do wonderful in the community. We have many independent houses. We have one in Revere that they actually take care of the group home on their own. So there's 6 of them, and they have an account, and they have an ATM card to that account that has sort of nothing to do with North Suffolk. They pay their own rent, they pay the bills out of that, they go food shopping, they pick the activities that they want to do, and they sort of make the decisions of how they want the house. So if they need a new couch, they decide what couch they're going to buy together, and they go out and buy it. So a program like that is wonderful to have, because it gives them the skills that they need to be able to run a household. And hopefully from there, they could move on into independent living in their own apartment.
Yeah, that would be ideal, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't like classifying anybody with a disorder. That would be, when you're classified as like being DS, or you're classified as being MH, it's sort of the same as being classified as cancer. It's a medical health issue. I don't want to be classified as cancer. I want to be classified as Joyce. And that's what we try to do with the clients. We classify them as who they are, and what works for them, and what works for some does not work forever. And we have a whole team of staff and program managers at each program. Some have assistants, and then we have nursing, and then we have clinical, so that we can learn of how to reduce behaviors or reduce issues, and try to keep them in the house as long as we possibly can.
Yeah, I had the pleasure to visit one of the homes out in, I think it was Revere. I could be wrong. It was such a home feeling. Like the friendships, I think it was 4 people that lived there, maybe there was 5. They had friendships with each other. 2 of them were like best friends. Mm-hmm. And the house manager was just sort of like mom. Yeah. It was just home. And you can feel it in the conversation with the folks living in the residence, and you can feel it talking to the staff. So it's a beautiful thing.
Well, and that's what we try to, we try to create that this is their home, and we try to keep them in their home as long as possible, unless independence and they want to move out and we feel they are ready to move out. We try to keep them, so that that's the place that they're going to stay until the end, that they're not going to go into a nursing home and pass away, that they're going to stay with us, because some of these relationships, some of these clients that we've had have been with us for 30 years. And they've been roommates with the others for so long. We have a house in Winthrop where they have been living together for I think it's 15 years, and now they're having difficulties walking, and it's I don't want to move them. So, we're trying to put in a back ramp, and we're trying to put in a front ramp, and I have PT come in to assess the situation, and, do we need bars on the walls, and how can we get them that these three can stay together? Because I can't imagine splitting them.
Because they're family, right?
Yeah, they're family, and their family is family.
Right.
One of the fathers is very involved, and so he makes sure every Friday he buys them pizza, and he's involved. They're sort of his kids as well. They are family.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have any story that kind of highlights a family member who may not have didn't believe that their family member could function at the level that they're functioning, and they were just surprised and grateful?
I'm trying to think of a story. We've had one. We've had one actually at our Clark House in Winthrop, where sort of the family member never thought that their son could be walking around the town of Winthrop on his own, and sort of have the independence of using the MBTA, and then eventually taking the MBTA to go visit her. Yeah. So that was a success story. Teaching him took a long time to teach him how to use the transportation. She lived in Dorchester. That's far from Winthrop. It's a couple of trains, but we took the time and slowly did it with him, that he would have little time alone and see how he did, and go with him, and then sort of slowly watch him. So maybe not be right next to him, and see if he could do it on his own and have a success. And now actually he goes and visits her 4 times.
And she must be thrilled, right?
He goes and visits her 4 times a week at least, unannounced sometimes. I don't know if she's thrilled about that. But she's definitely, I think, sort of didn't think that her son was capable of doing that. And I think people are a lot more capable if you can take the time. And if you have the staff, when you take the time with somebody, I think anybody can learn some skills.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, my one last question is, other than the small impact that this show will have, is there anything that you can share with the audience that could help reshape, that they could do to help reshape the narrative around people?
So I ask, that maybe you could go to your state legislators and ask for more money in mental health and developmentally disabled. I'm going to throw in the mental health because I do both, even though this month is for DS. There's not enough funding. So there's just not enough funding for staffing. There's not, and with that comes problems, because when you're not fully staffed, or when you don't have full-time staff, the training that has to occur with working with some people is very difficult if you have people coming in and out and you don't have the same staff all the time. So staffing is our biggest hurdle in finding qualified staff to work. Is very, very difficult. It's very short funding, taking care of other people, which is sad. And I know that they're trying to find the money through the state to be able to pay us more money, but that is definitely our number one concern, is being able to hire staff.
Right.
And keep them.
Right. Is there anything that I didn't ask, that we didn't discuss, that you think would be important to say at this point?
I think it's just important not to classify a person. That everybody has their issues. Everybody sort of has stress and has issues in their life that they have to deal with, and that we shouldn't just classify somebody as having DS or Down syndrome or any of the diagnosis for DS and saying that they can't. Because we always want to try to keep an open mind and see how they can, and what we can put in place to be able to do that, and how we can make it so that they can do something. Might not be exactly, a complete independence, but it could be that little steps. And I think little steps sometimes create then a bigger step, and then it creates them finishing or achieving something that they wanted to achieve. So I think it's just very important trying to keep an open mind.
It's a beautiful note to end on.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you
for your time.
Oh, thank you. No, thank you for your time. And thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll see you next time.